is a tutorial for the Ahsoka boot covers and bracers pattern. The boot covers are by far the more complicated ones. That's what I'll be focusing on first in this video. Your first step will be to print out all the pattern pieces at 100%. Next, you're going to arrange your pieces of paper like this. Make sure you're matching up A to A, B to B, C to C, and D to D, like this. Then you're going to cut out the paper. If you want to change the size of the boot covers, you're going to want to test your pattern before you start cutting on foam or fabric. The pattern that I have is made for like a normal kind of boot. Something like this. However, if you have smaller boots, or if you have wider boots, because maybe your calf is a little bit wider, it's not quite going to fit. So I do highly recommend that you do the pattern in paper and kind of tape the edges together as if you're using the tape as glue, just to test out the fit. When I say tape along the edges, what I mean is, if you have these two pieces that are gonna go together like this, you're gonna put up the seams, and then you're gonna tape here. I like to put little pieces of tape because that way you can get into the kind of curve, so just little pieces of tape here. And then you should be able to open up your boot cover and kind of wrap it around your foot once you do both seams. If you want it to be bigger, what I would probably do is just extend this line here. What that means is that instead of tracing and cutting right along this line here, like right here, you're gonna extend it and basically draw your line maybe here or even further, depending on how much bigger you want it to be. For the sake of keeping it even, since these two seams match up, if you make this seam larger or smaller, you should probably do something equal here. If you want to make it smaller though, I'm thinking that this is probably going to be the better seam to do. So basically all you're going to really do is you can either cut your pattern, just like cut in a line like that to make it smaller, or you can do this cutting after you do your original piece. If you have more questions about sizing, I'm going to make a separate video to explain that in depth. But once you've gotten your sizing done correctly, you're happy with your pattern, it's time to trace. You can trace this onto any material you'd like. Foam or vinyl are usually the best options, and then you're just going to cut. If you're doing foam, you can go ahead and trace right at the edge of the paper. If you are sewing the pieces together because you're working with vinyl, you will need to make a little seam allowance for yourself. All that means is that you're drawing the line here instead of here, like right up against the edge. You're going to add the seam allowance. So here are our pieces. If this is foam and you're planning to paint directly on the foam, I recommend you hit both sides with a heat gun just for a few seconds until it gets a little shiny. That'll close up kind of the holes and help the paint stick better. Next we're going to glue. Or so, if that is the case. So I like to use contact cement. So for contact cement, you need to let it dry for about 10 to 15 minutes, just so that it kind of sticks nicely. But I'm just gonna kind of paint on to the edge. Okay, I've waited for it to dry, so now it's time to put the edges together. You're gonna be putting these together, so you're gonna kind of have to force it in there. It's probably best to do this on a flat surface so you can get really nice edges. So here's what it should look like when we're done. You'll have all the pieces together. After you do your first cover, make sure that it's backwards for your next one. So what I mean by that, if I have this side glued here, I'm gonna wanna make sure it's this side facing that way when I put my glue on. Now that we're done, the next step is to reinforce the seams. So basically I'm just gonna hot glue some of this like leftover vinyl I have onto the seam just to help it stick. The seams are reinforced. We're going to use a rotary sander to sand down the edges. This is just because I don't want a super noticeable seam. This is going to be very light sanding because you don't want to accidentally cut through the foam. Alright, the edges are sanded. I did notice a couple places that need to be touched up a bit because it was a little bit of a crack, so I just added a little bit more contact cement and I'll press that together once it's dry. Here is the bracer pattern. I've already cut this one out, but I wanted to show you how to make it larger. So if your arm is significantly wider or smaller than mine, I would just print this out at a smaller percentage so you can make it smaller on all counts. If, however, you just need it a little bit wider, but your arm is about this long, it's pretty easy. You just like extend out on the left. Next step is layers of Plasti Dip. I struggled a lot with the weathering on this. I tried at one point putting a white layer underneath the red, but that didn't really have the effect I wanted. So this is just watered down light brown paint that I brushed on and then kind of dabbed off with a white paper towel. So this is kind of what it looks like with just the watered down brown paint. So I'm going to go ahead and do some glass spray paint to give it a bit of a smoothness and a shine. Next, we're going to work on the closures. I'm going to use Velcro because it tends to be a little bit sturdier than snaps. I'm basically going to be hiding the Velcro underneath these little tabs. This is about the size I cut out, maybe about an inch. And then we're going to use E6000 to glue this onto the foam. Next, we're going to cut down the extra Velcro along the edges here and then glue down any loose Velcro edges over here with some crazy glue. The reason why I like to use crazy glue is because I figure using two types of glues is safer, because then if one fails, the other will hold until you can get home. You're definitely gonna need a friend to help you with this. First, just stick the Velcro on like this, and then what you're gonna have to do is put it on your arm as if the Velcro is already there, have your friend hold it in place, and then put a little bit of glue into the Velcro so that it sticks on, hold it till it dries, take it off, and then affix the glue correctly. It's kind of an uncomfortable maneuver to get that glue underneath while not moving it while it's still on, so it's going to be hard, but again, if you have a friend, it'll be way easier for you. Here are the 3D printed buckles I have. So I'm just going to take some of this glue, put it along the center here, and stick. Your last step is going to be the little triangles that poke out by the elbow. This is the piece for the elbow, and you're going to glue it onto the back. This is the right bracer, so I'm going to glue it kind of like here on this spot right here. What I would do is put on the bracer and then kind of just like stick this fabric between and kind of just like position it where you want, hold it, take it off, and then glue it. Just gonna kind of push it in here. The last thing you need to do is glue together these flaps right here. Make sure the boot is where you want it. You're gonna fold the pieces like this and then clip it in place. I like to use one of my clips. And you can slide it off and glue it. Alright, so this is the final product. Here are the gauntlets. I have my own gloves here. And the boot covers.